Senator Rubio, you're no stranger to hurricanes. You've seen countless hurricanes, both as a public official and a lifelong resident from Florida. Based on what you've seen so far, how does this compare?
Well, I don't think it has a comparison, not for Florida. There are entire communities. Fort Myers Beach no longer exists. I mean, it'll have to be rebuilt. It'll be something different. It was a slice of old Florida that you can't recapture. Sanibel's basically flattened. And even the structures that are standing, I was with the Coast Guard 2 days ago as we went overhead on it. Even the structures that are standing have been damaged by water, are probably uninhabitable and will have to be raised. So, I mean, this is a character-altering event. It'll change the character and the nature of these communities. They'll be rebuilt, but you can't rebuild something that is a slice of old Florida and bring it back. It'll be something new, but it won't be the same, and that's the most heartbreaking part about it from an economic standpoint. Obviously, the human toll is still being calculated, and that has no price. It's extraordinary, and we fear that that number will continue to rise.
What are you hearing out of Sanibel? We saw the bridge destroyed. Are people getting what they need on the island?
Well, I think, unfortunately, there are still some people left there that wanted to stay after the fact, but the island is cut off. I mean, you can't get there. So at some point, they're going to have to come off and restart their life somewhere else. In the meantime, you see the bridge. It's not just the parts that were washed away. That entire bridge is structurally compromised, potentially. So it'll have to be rebuilt, and that'll take a while. And in the interim, I think our priority now is to identify the people that remain on Sanibel who wanted to stay there but eventually have to come off because there's just no way to continue with life there. There's no way to restore the power. There's no economy there. At some point, they'll have to be moved. And, you know, as I said, that bridge will be rebuilt. That'll take a very long time, a couple of years at least. And obviously, you know, life in Sanibel is going to change in the interim.
And how's FEMA doing? Is Florida getting everything it needs right now from the Biden administration?
Yeah, FEMA, they've all been great. As I said, the federal response from day one has been very positive, as it's always been in the past, and we're grateful for that. You know, FEMA's the primary responder. The incident command is in the state. The states step up, and then the states tell FEMA we need this or we need that, and that's the process we're working through right now. But it's an extraordinary mobilization of the Army Corps, the Coast Guard. I mean, virtually every federal asset that's available, not just through FEMA but other agencies, and then the individual assistance piece, where there'll be many people who are going to need that individual assistance in the counties that have been approved for it, and they'll need it because they'll need some place to live now and for the foreseeable future, and small businesses that no longer exist that are going to need help from the SBA.
You and Senator Rick Scott have already said that Congress is going to need to step up, allocate money for this relief effort. That's, of course, not surprising. Back in 2013, you voted against the relief bill for for Superstorm Sandy. You said that it included extraneous material, extraneous items that had nothing to do with emergency relief. It included pork. Will you make the same stand here? Will you insist that this emergency bill include only money to deal with this catastrophe?
Well, I said at the time, and by the way, since Sandy, we've had multiple votes for emergency relief all over the country, including wildfires, and I've supported all of them. In fact, I've supported them without pay-fors, like other people say they want the money paid for. What I won't support is things that are not emergency relief. What we're going to ask for Florida is what we've supported for every other state in the country that's been affected by natural disasters, and that is emergency relief designed to be spent immediately to help the people affected now. What happened with that bill, not back in 2013, is it wasn't just emergency relief. It included funding that should have gone through the normal funding process, cars for DHS, you know, a roof at the Smithsonian, fisheries in Alaska, maybe very meritorious projects, but that should go through the normal process. This is about emergency relief. So I think we will fight for the money, as we've supported for other states, that is needed for emergency relief, money that's going to be spent now, not money that's going to be spent 5 years from now on projects that may be very worthy, may be very necessary, but that should go through the normal process, not the emergency process. That's what we'll ask for Florida. That's what we've always supported.
Let me just be clear on this, though. Will you take the same stand if Congress adds, as they often do with emergency bills, items that don't have anything to do with recovery from this hurricane? Will you vote against the emergency bill?
Well, it won't come to that because it's our state. So if we're not asking for it and we're saying we don't need it and has nothing to do with emergency relief for Florida, then why would it be in there? I mean, why would somebody add something from another state that's not impacted by the storm? So it shouldn't come to that. And I'm not, you know, it shouldn't come to that fork in the road because it's an unnecessary thing. It's our request. So our
Right.
request will look that way, and
New
that's what I'll ask
Jersey-
for my colleagues to support.
New Jersey and the other states didn't request the extraneous items in that emergency bill in 2013. You voted against this. I'm just asking, would you go so far as to vote against a bill that would also help
Well,
your
frankly,
state?
yeah, that's not accurate. I mean, there was requests made from not just some of those states that were impacted, but some of those allied with the people in those states. And the people from those states weren't complaining about that spending at the time, unfortunately. Maybe some of them were, but the majority of them were not. They just wanted the emergency piece. They didn't care if it came with another, $1 out of $6. Was for immediate spending. So in our case, we're not going to ask for the other $5. We're just going to ask for that one that has to do with emergency relief. I imagine South Carolina, North Carolina, other states in the Northeast will have the same, and there are other natural disasters that are occurring. We may need to include Puerto Rico in that request if they need additional funding. So that's what we're going to focus on, and that's what we're going to push for, and that's what we're going to insist on, and we're going to be consistent on that.
And Senator, before you go, you're obviously one of the top Republicans on the Foreign Relations Committee, ranking member on intelligence. I want to ask you about Ukraine. You saw Vladimir Zelensky is asking for expedited process for NATO membership for Ukraine. The administration is saying now is not the time to do that. What's your sense? Should Ukraine have expedited process?
Well, ultimately, I think that's going to have to go through the normal process for expansion, and nor do I think that's the answer to the problem here. I think the bigger challenge we face right now is that between now and the time all that goes down, Vladimir Putin, I think before he does some nuclear demonstration, could very well attack some NATO distribution point, because that's who he's blaming. He's blaming NATO, the U.S., our allies, for supplying Ukraine with the weaponry that's allowed Ukraine to be so effective. So I think we need to start thinking through what's the response going to be if he attacks an airport in Poland or a train station on the border with Poland, and NATO forces that are embedded there to help with the distribution, not in combat, are killed or injured. And I think that's going to be a real fork in the road for the alliance that could come sooner rather than later. And it's the one that I focus most on right now, and I think that's really going to be the more immediate challenge here.